Hey there, it's Alex from Wonder Tree, and this is Brandlove, where we tell you all about the history of your favorite brands, talk about their hits and misses, and I show you how it would help them with their branding. We wanted to start off today with a bang, so today I'm talking about one of my favorite brands, Apple. I've been an Apple fan for a long time, and I'm not going to apologize for that. I think they make quality products, like the seamless integration of everything in their ecosystem, and I love not buying a new laptop every 2 years. So let's get into it. Apple was founded by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne on April Fool's Day in 1976. No word on whether or not that was on purpose. Originally envisioned as a computer hardware and software company, they released their first computer, the Apple I, the same year. Following the IKEA model, you had to build this original computer yourself. They released the Apple II in 1977 and continued to update this model over the next decade. Many people think that the Macintosh was released in 1984, was their first personal computer with a graphical user interface, but Apple actually released a computer with one called the Lisa in 1983. We'll talk about this more when we get into their hits and misses. Apple came out of the gate hot. They went public in 1980 and enjoyed financial success until the high cost of their products and internal politics began to impact them negatively. As computers began to become more and more a normal part of everybody's lives, and therefore less expensive, Apple found themselves losing out to the more affordable PCs on the market. Steve Wozniak stepped down from the company under good terms, and Steve Jobs left under decidedly less good terms, founding his own technology company, Next. Apple was nearing bankruptcy in 1997, so they bought Jobs Next for $400 million to help solve the issues they were having with their operating system. This also lured Jobs back to the company, where he was able to right the ship over the next decade through innovative technology, products, and branding. Today, Apple is one of the most valuable brands in the world and holds the honor of being the first publicly traded U.S. company to be valued at over $1 trillion. That's right, trillion with a T. It's hard to tell the history of Apple without mentioning the products and its branding, so let's jump into the hits and misses. Talking about Apple's hits is pretty much a rundown of the most popular products of our lifetime, but it's a mistake to ignore their branding. Apple's branding is possibly its biggest hit. Simple and uncompromisingly consistent, you know an Apple product the second you see it. Try it out for yourself. Next time you see a laptop, see how quickly you can identify the brand if it's not Apple. If a phone isn't in a case that hides what it really looks like, you instantly know an iPhone from something else. You can immediately tell if a person's wearing AirPods or something from another brand. The power of Apple's branding can be seen in the dichotomy it's created. It's either immediately recognizable as Apple or one of 1,000 other faceless products. The Apple Macintosh was introduced with a famous commercial based off the book 1984 by George Orwell. 1984 is set in a dystopian world where everyone is terrorized into conforming to the will of the state through sheer oppressive tactics and omnipresent government propaganda. Apple used this commercial to set themselves apart as the company for people who were rebels and innovators. They sold around $3.5 million worth of Macintoshes after that commercial ran, so I think we can say this one was also a hit. We can't talk about Apple's hits without talking about the iPhone, a product that will probably go down as one of the most important inventions in human history. The iPhone was the first modern smartphone, and while it did build on and improve products that came before it, it was brand new in and of itself. It's hard to exaggerate the impact the iPhone has had on the world. And yeah, I get it. There are other smartphone brands out there, and I know some of y'all are having finger cramps as you try not to tell me about your Android in the comments. But the iPhone is one that really started the smartphone revolution. The iPhone allowed us to put the internet in our pockets, to document every aspect of our daily lives, and to carry out our favorite media with us everywhere we go. For better or worse, the iPhone also created the platform for social media explosion. Say what you will, but it wouldn't be anywhere near as big as it is if we had to open our laptop every time we wanted to waste a few hours on TikTok. If you own an iPhone, there's a good chance it's also your personal assistant, from maintaining your calendar to reminding you that it's your grandma's birthday. When they write the history of modern technology, the iPhone will be front and center. The Apple ecosystem itself is a hit that all these things sync together seamlessly. It's almost difficult to talk about Apple's hits because of their products and how well they're woven into our daily lives that we might not even notice that they're there. That's the mark of a successful company. Their Be Different branding created a niche audience for them and somehow still manages to remain relevant even when it seems like literally everybody has at least one Apple product. Their laptops and computers are known for their quality and their longevity. The iPad acts as a perfect middle ground between the iPhone and the laptop, and the Apple Watch seems to be as commonplace as the iPhone. Apple's biggest hit may be their ability to be the norm and still somehow seem cool and countercultural. Apple's product-related misses are almost just a different perspective on how good the company really is. To some extent, Apple's product-related misses can often be seen as more of a proof of what a good company Apple actually is. Apple has released products that failed, but it's almost always because they were ahead of their time and simply cost too much in comparison to the competition. Beyond that, there's a good chance you haven't even heard of Apple's biggest failures because they're drowned out by the overwhelming successes of their other products. That being said, let's take a look at where Apple has dropped the ball. Remember Lisa? Lisa, which was short for Local Integrated Software Architecture, was actually the first computer with a graphical interface, but it was also clearly a prototype and clocked in around $21,000 in today's prices. This could not compete and ended up being a failure. She was innovative but hit the market too early. They would correct this the very next year with the Macintosh. The Apple Pippin is mostly remembered, if you remember it at all, as a gaming console, but Apple intended it to be a lot more than that. Envisioned as an open multimedia technology platform, Apple had big plans for the Pippin. They worked with Bandai to create a gaming console that played CD-based games, but it was never able to get off the ground. The Pippin was a powerful machine, but it also cost about 3 times as much as the Nintendo console did at the time, thus dooming it not only to failure, but to obscurity. Let's talk about Apple Maps. Come on, if we're honest, we're not going to use Apple Maps unless we're trying to look up a destination while we're already driving and Siri forces us to use the app. Although better than the big fold-out maps people had to use back in the day, Apple Maps had become a meme for the lack of accuracy and features. Called the #1 tech disaster of 2012, Apple Maps has improved, but they've never really recovered. Not all of Apple's misses have been product-based. Apple has dealt with complaints about tracking iPhone users without their knowledge or consent, slowing down older iPhone models to preserve battery life, and maybe encouraging people to shell out the cash for a newer model, and bowing to Chinese governmental pressure by removing VPN apps from the App Store. Apple also faces near constant complaints about the number of additional things you have to buy to make their products compatible with other technology, like the printers and presentation software. We can personally thank Apple for the word dongle for becoming mainstream. Apple has also received quite a bit of criticism for its use of factories with sweatshop-like conditions in other countries, as well as other labor practices for its contractors, its impact on the environment, and where they source the materials for their products. Some of its anti-competitive practices that limit people to having their products worked on by Apple itself have also come under fire. Apple's latest scandal has the potential for sinister consequences, as its AirTags, which are little devices used to track objects, have been used to stalk people. To their credit, Apple has been trying to create safeguards to prevent this, but to the ability to track somebody who does not want to be tracked, this could certainly end up being a problem in the long run. This may be another example of Apple's technology hitting the market a little too quickly. Overall, despite the various misses and missteps that Apple has experienced over the years, it remains one of the most profitable companies on the planet and has a user base that expresses some of the highest brand loyalty in the market. Personally, I know plenty of people who have moved to Apple because of the lack of quality with a similar product that was made by another company, but I don't know anyone who's left Apple for the same reason. When Apple does fail to really grab a consumer, it's because of how much the products cost, not because of the products themselves. Essentially, Apple is the gold standard, and the only reason someone doesn't use its products is because they can't afford them or they don't care enough to spend the money. So there's the history of Apple and a rundown of their hits and misses. Now let's see how I would handle a redesign of one of the most recognizable logos on the planet. So it's no secret that Apple has a really good, simple logo right now. The one thing I think that could change is the smoothness in the Apple icon itself. There is a little bit of depth there that I think is unnecessary, so we're going to smooth that out a little bit, as well as adding a typeface that I think actually fits. Apple's logo doesn't actually have a very unique font. In fact, Myriad Pro is what they use, and that's one of the base fonts on all their computers. Maybe it's because it's Apple, but I still think that it's a little bit too bland for what they actually are. So making a new typeface that kind of fits their brand a little bit more and that can stand out on its own without the icon is something that I think can really benefit Apple. Another thing that I think they do well but don't do enough is utilize their color palettes. They have a lot of color palettes that actually work really well with the icon or with the phones and things like that with their backgrounds, and they don't really use it very often. So adding a color splash and using that as an alternate to this updated logo is actually going to be something that works really well for Apple. Thanks for joining us on today's Brandlove episode. If you like what you saw, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, the like button, and make sure to get notified about future Brandlove episodes. If you want a kick-ass brand of your own, make sure you visit wondertree.com, and we'll catch you in the next episode.